Welcome to the Hollywood Scholar. I'm Chad Morgan, and the Rings of Power is over, and I can't be more excited to have my Thursday nights free again and to just not have to watch this utter crap any longer, because I legitimately believe that this show is a contender for one of the worst television shows ever made, at least one of the worst that I've ever seen in my lifetime. It was truly a horrendous piece of media that will go down in history as an abomination, and these stands who say that they love it, that it's the most important thing, the best thing they've ever seen, will forget it near immediately, because that's what they always do. The door mentality of these stands is gonna apply in this situation just like it did with all its predecessors, such as Kenobi. I bet if you asked anyone online who said Kenobi was their favorite thing ever, they could not even give you a plot summary of the events of that show, because it's a door mentality. Just next thing, consume next product. Oh, this is the best thing since the last thing, and it's never actually of any substance or quality inside these people's minds. And that is already happening with Rings of Power, and it's so great to see. But for the next couple weeks, we will continue to see Axis mainstream and corporate coping about the response to this show, and we have several articles here that show how bad things are getting over at these types of Axis and mainstream media places. We start with this doozy of an article from the Conversationalist that doesn't actually provide any evidence for the long, big, overarching statements that it makes. It just, again, is kind of in the same category as the showrunners calling the audience patently evil. This one is just like, oh, if you don't like it, you're far-right extremist. Oh, if you like Tolkien, you're a far-right extremist. And it doesn't actually provide any evidence. It doesn't actually provide any quotes. It's just, hey, you're evil, evil, evil. And it's really some quite profound, horrific takes here from this supposed scholar. And let's jump into it. There's quite a lot of repetitive natures, just like, oh, you're evil, you're evil. I'm going to try to filter through this abomination as well as I can. So a lot of people are talking about the new adaptation, but far-right commentators have tried to shut down any discussion of a new retelling that is not to their liking. Now, I'm going to assume that she's calling far-right people anyone who has criticized the show, even though that's not the case, and that's what she's going to use throughout this entire article. So when I say we or us or YouTube or stuff like that, I'm not actually talking about far-right commenters. I'm talking about the people that I believe she's referring to, which are not far-right, which is insane. So any discussion, we're not trying to shut down any discussion on it. We're just giving our opinions and saying that we think it's awful and that we hate it. That's not trying to shut down discussion. People come at us all the time and say, hey, they disagree with us. As long as you're polite in my comments, I will be polite. I've had a lot of people say, hey, I really like this show. I don't understand what you don't like. And it's like, hey, I respect your opinion. I don't understand how you could possibly like it, but thank you for sharing your feedback. But if you come at me aggressively, I'm going to respond aggressively. But there's no way that we can shut down any discussion, so we don't even try to shut down any discussion. That's an asinine place to start off this really quite intelligent article. A better understanding of Tolkien's work and the nature of adaptation will combat some of the online disinformation and harassment campaign. Again, this article, just like all the others, provides zero evidence for the supposed harassment. If there is harassment, point out to specific instances, and I will condemn those specific instances. Don't say that it's happening on this broad, overarching basis, that all the criticism of the show is evil and racist and whatnot, if you can't prove multiple examples. If it's just like, hey, this dude said this thing, yeah, I'll call that out. There's always going to be people like that for everything. I've got trolls who say worse things than what Moses Ingram got for Kenobi. I've gotten worse stuff than that. Faithful adaptations. Long before the first episode aired, a lot of people were talking about how faithful it was going to be. Okay, that's an important discussion to be had, and a faithful adaptation is an important thing. There's no such thing as a faithful adaptation in all details. And no one disagrees with that. Everyone knows that you gotta change stuff. The Peter Jackson movies are some of the most faithful adaptations I've ever seen, but they're not 100%. So are the Witcher trilogy of games. They're very faithful adaptations to the books, even though they're sequels, technically. No one is on the other side of this argument, but there's ways to do it right, and closer the better, of course. With Peter Jackson's movies, it was, hey, find out what is different from the lore. In Rings of Power, you have to try to find what is the same as the lore. That is the problem with the faithful adaptation. They're just like, oh, they don't like that it's not 100%, so they're far right. It's like, you're not even listening to our actual criticism. And again, that's something that we see all the time. They don't quote any people, and they don't actually listen to any criticism. It's just this amorphous boogeyman that they create for themselves. Every adaptation is a reinterpretation of source material. I hate that that term, reinterpretation, is constantly used in these situations. I don't think adaptations should be reinterpretations. Adaptation and reinterpretation are not synonyms. It's like, yeah, you're changing it into a new medium. That's what adaptation means. But reinterpretation, the point, the theme, the message, the actual story is still the same and should still be the heart that carries through it. That's the important part. If you're reinterpreting the story, then it's not the story anymore. And so they're not synonyms, so I hate when they bring it up like that. Far-right commenters use Tolkien as an image of the world they want to have, a male-dominated, all-white society. Now that is, again, another example of them not actually listening. The whole issue of race was about an accuracy standpoint. It's not, no one said, this is what we want the world to look like. That would be insane. If anyone did, I would condemn those individual people, because that's not what my criticism of the race swaps for Rings of Power was about. It's just, hey, this is about medieval Europe, and we're going to get into the historical aspect of it in just a minute here, but they're just like, oh, you just want an all-white society, male-dominated. It's like, no, it just has to be incorporated in ways that make sense in the universe and historically, because there are diverse countries in The Lord of the Rings that they could have adapted. Like the Southlanders, they would have been a little bit darker of skin because of the geographical stuff involved, of how people evolve. And if there are going to be people of diverse backgrounds north of there, they've got to explain why they're in those regions, because immigration wasn't a common thing. I mean, how hard was Frodo's journey? That took forever. Yeah, if traveling is that dangerous and that difficult, immigration's going to be near non-existent. And I don't think they understand what all that means. So, and it's not about being male-dominated. Eowyn and Arwen are some of people's favorite characters. So again, they're not listening. They're just making a boogeyman, a straw man argument for everyone who criticizes the show. And it's really pathetic to see. And so did Tolkien hate adaptations? No, not necessarily. He has a lot of letters that talk about how he hated changes from it, and like he straight down to how the lambus bread was used. He wanted really faithful accuracy when it came to his adaptations, or lots of money, and that's a respectful position. There's nothing wrong with that, but we simply can't know what Tolkien would have thought of these current adaptations. Oh yeah, you can rate his products, and we don't know if he wouldn't like that. I just don't know. Would he not like that? I don't know. No, you can assume things based on an inference of logic and a construction of his personality based on his writings. Yes, we all know that he would hate this current adaptation because of what we know about him. Just because he's dead doesn't give you free reign to do whatever you want to his material. That is just a get out of jail free card in this person's mind. Purposeful retelling. On one of the far right's repeated white supremacist claims. Again, where are these terms coming from? Where's the evidence that these people are far right white supremacists? There's no proof. It's just, oh, you don't like the show? Ooh, you're going to get this label. You're going to get that label. And they think it delegitimizes any contrary opinion to theirs. And it doesn't, because this has been done so many times in so many other properties, and even in non-pop culture arenas, that these words mean virtually nothing because they're thrown around so much. It's like the boy who cried wolf. And it doesn't actually mean anything. You've got to prove stuff like this and actually make them worthwhile and scary labels if you want them to have the effect that you believe that they have. It claims that they were representing the European Middle Ages. Yes, he said that, and therefore the character should be all white. But the Middle Ages in Europe included people of color, as that examinations of historical evidence have pointed out. Now, that evidence of historical records, that's very rare onesie-twosie situations. Yes, you can immigrate. You can get captured in slavery and, your family, your descendants grow up in a different area. Yes, things like that can happen. But they're so minute on a level that it shouldn't be just like in Rings of Power where it's 50-50 diverse and not. That's not how the world worked in medieval Europe, which he said is what this was based on. Just do it in ways that make sense. If characters are said to be a certain way in the story, leave them that a certain way. If you're going to do new characters, which shouldn't be any main new characters in Tolkien because he has so many great characters. If you're going to do that, explain why they're there, have a in-lore reason, because it's rare. They're just saying, oh, we found a black man in France once, so it could have been 50% black. That was something that was going on with the Vikings Valhalla TV show with that one Jarl that they race and gender swapped. And someone was saying, oh, well, the historical records don't say everyone was right, so they could have all been black and we wouldn't have known. It's like, no, we kind of know that Scandinavia is pretty white. It's pretty white because of geographical staples of evolution. There's a reason why races evolved in separate locations, geographical locations from each other. And that's not racist. It's just geography, and it's okay. These people act like that's evil. So, yeah, there were people of color in Europe in the medieval times, but it wasn't a big enough thing to act like everyone was or half the people were. So still, more disingenuous stuff, taking little bits of evidence and blowing it up into inordinate straw man arguments. Although Tolkien made statements against racism and anti-Semitism, he based his works on racist hierarchies and medieval racial stereotypes. It's never enough. You can condemn racists, you can fight Nazis, but you don't do everything that the modern woke wants you to do, you're still going to be labeled with all these hateful terms. I'm very much against judging the past by today's standards, because nobody wins that. We're going to lose that in the future. There's going to be some evolution of mythology or understanding of the world that makes everyone who's alive today evil. Don't judge the past by today's standards. He fought against the racial and hateful stereotypes of that day, and he did his best in his era, and he was a great man. But you know, his writings include some things of the era that aren't actually that bad. Racial hierarchies, there's no actual evidence of that. It's just, hey, some of the elves and dwarves, they don't like each other for these reasons. Okay. Medieval stereotypes, yeah, it was based on medieval Europe, so that was also a thing for accuracy with them. It's just an incredibly disingenuous position that we've seen time and time again from all these different franchises. And too much emphasis on women. Peter Jackson, we wanted the Peter Jackson Galadriel, and apparently, since it was Warrior Galadriel, we're evil for wanting who we know Galadriel to be who Galadriel is portrayed as. But this current adaptation portrays the younger Galadriel. Stop saying that. She is thousands of years old at this point. She's younger, yes, but in terms of elf lifespan, second age and third age aren't all that different for her. They're just like, oh, she's young and she's brash. And it's like, no, she's 8,000 years old. That should be enough to get past puberty. But apparently, since she's not 10,000 years or however old she is in the third age, she can be stupid. And in some versions, Tolkien hinted that she was ambitious, athletic, and fierce fighter. Never said fighter. And some of the evidence I've seen is, oh, her name translates to mean golden crowned. And they're like, oh, that means she won athletic events. It's like, no, that means she's blonde. So some of this evidence that she's referring to is misappropriated at the very, very best. And finally, to close out, prejudging it based on far-right talking part harms people. Again, where are these far-right talking points? Just, oh, you want accuracy in the story. That makes you far-right. That's the only evidence that she provided. Weakens our democratic social discourse. Not liking Rings of Power is a threat to our democracy. And will not lead to a better understanding of adaptation. It's a threat to our democracy, and we want 100% accuracy, apparently, so it's a threat to our democracy. We must certainly draw the line at engaging with racist and misogynist disinformation and abuse. Oh, you don't agree with me 100%? Oh, you don't love this TV show I like? You're a threat to democracy. You're a far-right misogynist bigot who spreads misinformation and abuse. Still not providing any proof of those. Just amorphous straw man arguments. And look at these tags. Fandom, white supremacists, critical race, J.R.R. Tolkien, far-right groups. Listen to this article. Is that some sort of like a tactic? I don't know. Rings of Power. This is what they think. They think the fandom are these things. And it's just incredibly disingenuous. And a scholar just trying to be like, I am morally virtuous because I like a TV show and you're evil because you don't. Why did pop culture have to be the line in this culture war? It is insane that we've come to this point. And we have a couple other articles that I want to briefly mention here that aren't anywhere near as rife for dissection as this article was. But we have this one here from The Slate, and it's one way the Rings of Power outdoes the Lord of the Rings movies. And it's all about, oh, women have agency, so Rings of Power is better. It doesn't really compare anything, and they're big, Rings of Power has more females in it, because apparently you can only count so many women in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and that includes Shelob, and they're like, that's how we write. That's our proof, because Shelob was a woman. Yeah, it's not anywhere as good as the other one, but it was still one worth mentioning because it was pretty funny, and you all should definitely check it out. Then we have this one that's been circling around from the Hollywood Reporter, an interview with the showrunners that compares Sauron to Walter White. When I first read that, I was like, there's no way that they said that. They're not that stupid. Oh, I can't believe I'm still underestimating them even after they wrote Rings of Power, because McKay said, Sauron can now just be Sauron, like Tony Soprano or Walter White. He's evil, but complexly evil. Walter White was a fall from grace. He wasn't evil initially, and once he was evil, I mean, complex in his character, but his evilness wasn't necessarily. And I haven't seen Soprano, so I don't know anything about that. But Sauron, he's kind of been evil for a very, very long time. Please don't write Sauron like Walter White. I don't want to see Sauron like hammering the One Ring and going, I am the one who knocks. I don't want to see that. We felt like if we did that in season 1, he'd overshadow everything else. So, well, they're just like, oh, we didn't include him because he'd overshadow the women, but in season 2, he can be just as complexly evil as Walter White. He's popular, isn't he? Please like our show. We mentioned something popular. So the first season is like Batman Begins and The Dark Knight is the next movie. Batman was pretty well realized in Batman Begins. I don't know what he's talking about there. He's just, again, we mentioned something that people like. Please like us too. With Sauron maneuvering out in the open. We're really excited. Season 2 has a canonical story. Oh, so Season 1 didn't have a canonical story? Huh, because they kept saying, oh, it's canonical because Tolkien never said that this didn't happen. He never said that this didn't happen. He also didn't say that Galadriel had a Tennant's penis, but we kind of know she didn't. There may be viewers who are like, this is the story we're hoping to get in season 1. In season 2, we're giving it to them. This is more cope. It's like, hey, this is a subtle way of saying, hey, we know you didn't like season 1. Well, season 2 is going to be what you like. And it's more coping, just trying to regroup whatever fans can survive the abomination that was season 1. And it's not working. Not just these Tolkien enthusiasts are the ones that are denying this series, rejecting this season 1. Even places like CNN have called it a failure. Amazon's next battle, convincing the world Lord of the Rings is a rousing success. He's talking about Rings of Power there. And this article is just like, yeah, it didn't go over well. They're even admitting in CNN that Rings of Power didn't go over well. And that is a victory, if nothing else. And it proves that not everyone is far-right extremists criticizing this show. And this is just final coping, the final death rattles of a dying corpse that is the Rings of Power. But anyway, that's all I have for today. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. Anon. If you like what I do here and want to see good, compelling stories that Hollywood will no longer give you, check out my book series, Odyssey of a Phoenix, a mythological epic about philosophy, morality, and modern-day mental illness issues. Books 1, Down in Flames, and Book 2, Apocalypse Then, currently on sale. Book 3, Kill the Dark, coming soon.